Live from London, this is BBC News. Paris gets ready to host the Olympics. The opening ceremony of the 33rd Modern Summer Games takes place later. Hours before the opening ceremony, the French rail company SNCF says its high-speed network has been targeted by vandalism. These are live pictures from Paris as the city prepares for its big day. In other news, the UK Health Secretary says the health and social care regulator in England is not fit for purpose. US Vice President Kamala Harris says she had a frank and constructive meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The leader of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, one of the world's most powerful drug lords, is arrested in Texas. Hello and welcome, I'm Samantha Simmons. After years of planning and a full century after the French capital last hosted the Games, final preparations are underway for today's opening ceremony of the Summer Olympics in Paris. But this morning, the French railway system is facing major disruption after what appears to be a coordinated vandalism on several high-speed lines into the capital. The rail company SNCF said it included arson attacks and was an attempt to paralyse the network. Eurostar, which operates trains from London to Paris, called it a coordinated act of malice. It comes amid tight security as organisers prepare for tonight's ceremony, which will see athletes carried on boats along the River Seine through the heart of the city in front of 300,000 spectators. Well, let's just show you, as we're looking at there, the scene live at one railway station in Paris, where, as I was saying, hours before the opening ceremony, French rail company SNCF said its high-speed network has been targeted by what it's called malicious acts aimed at paralysing the system. We understand that several high-speed TGV lines have been hit to the west, north and east of Paris, and that queues are now forming at the Montparnasse station, which serves destinations to the west of the capital. Well, we've also heard from the Transport Minister a short time ago in France. Patrice Vergerier has strongly condemned what he called criminal acts that he said would affect people's holiday plans. Well, a number of trains have been cancelled, and SNCF has warned that the situation could last at least all weekend while repairs are conducted. The Sports Minister has described the attacks as downright appalling, adding that the impact of the public and on the public and Olympic athletes was currently being assessed. Well, we know that more than 300,000 spectators are expected in the heart of Paris. That's today alone for the opening ceremony, which begins later on this evening. That will see thousands of Olympic athletes sailing down the River Seine. In terms of details about what actually happened and those attacks on the transport network, SNCF said fires had been set alight aimed at damaging its facilities. And a source close to the investigation has told one news agency, the AFP, that the attack involved acts of sabotage. We believe that no one at the moment has admitted targeting the network. There's obviously going to be concern that it involves apparently coordinated acts of vandalism. So at the moment, no idea of who's actually behind this. But as I was mentioning, some high-speed services have been diverted onto other lines, and this has inevitably caused a knock-on effect to other services. So we'll continue to keep an eye on what's happening there and how it's impacting people as well. But while we're keeping an eye on that, obviously the focus very much also on the Games, a huge day for France and a big moment for the thousands of athletes who are taking part. Years of training, build-up, expectation, and of course a large amount of pressure. Well, let's speak to Professor Steve Peters. He's a leading sports psychiatrist and CEO of Chimp Management. Great to have you on the programme. So tell us, as I was saying there, years of preparing for this really special moment, which is going to take place over the next few weeks at the Olympics. Tell us, how do athletes prepare?
Mentally and physically. Most people will have a sports psychologist and a psychiatrist coming in, but do similar work. Well, we're looking at the physical aspects of getting fit and the mental aspects. So for the last few years in building up for Olympians I'm working with, we look at what will happen in the build-up to the Olympics, what happens on the day. For example, what's happened this morning with unexpected things happening, you've got to learn to have focus, and you've got to learn to have a mental strategy of where you want your thinking and your emotions to be in order to optimize performance. So it's a skill base that we're working on, no different to a physical base.
So these days, do most elite athletes work with sports psychiatrists, psychologists such as yourself?
I think they do. Obviously, people vary in their ability and what they feel they're able to do to manage themselves. So not everybody will want that. But many of the athletes realise that there are available techniques and support systems to show you how your mind works and how you can actually make it work in your favour and optimise physical performance.
And tell us, you work closely with the athlete Adam Peaty, a big British name competing. Tell us about him, how he prepares, a big British name, of course, lots of eyes going to be on him in the Games.
Yeah, I'm working with Adam. It's a privilege and a great pleasure. He's a great guy, along with his coach, Mel Marshall, who we formed a team on the mental side of things. He works really hard on this. He applies it. He feeds back. So what we do is we look at the way his mind works and the way he thinks, because I work with people in a unique way, so that there's no room for sudden thoughts or behaviours that will appear at this crucial time. So it's all planned for many, many months ahead of time.
So, as you say, it's a very individual kind of strategy that you employ. What kind of techniques, though, do you teach athletes to help them with the pressures?
Explore what's unique to them. So, for example, if you take the Olympics itself, and then people know that millions of people will watch, and there's a 1 in a 4 year opportunity to perform at your best. Some athletes will rise to that and say that my belief is this is my opportunity to do this. Whereas other athletes might say to me, I find that too daunting and I feel it's a threat. So we have to look at what negative thoughts some athletes might have and what positive thoughts, and say, right, what's the optimum thinking for that particular athlete? Because even when you get an athlete who seems to be positive, saying it's a once in a 4 year opportunity, that can actually heighten emotions so that you start getting impaired judgment. So we have to look at what their mind does and what works for them individually.
How do they block out the fact that, as you said, millions of eyes on them for a lot of these athletes? And there's 10,000 athletes competing in these games. It may be the first time that they've actually had cameras on them and that they've had the eyes of the world, you know, people from all over the world watching them on their TV sets or online. How do they kind of block that out?
Again, different athletes work in different ways, but so the common distraction techniques. But the key thing is to focus on the process of what you're actually doing. So I try to tie in particularly events like athletics on the track, where you might have an 800 metre run, and break the race down so that it focuses on specific parts of the race during the race. That way the mind can't wander off onto other areas. And if it does, then we have a technique or a process by which we bring it back quite quickly. So it's the way the mind works with trigger points to get focus or refocus to occur.
To what extent do sports psychiatrists such as yourself travel with teams? Because you're obviously at home in Derbyshire, so you've not travelled to Paris right now. I don't know if you're planning on being there, but to what extent do they need that attention, these athletes? Do they need somebody to be with them in case they do have a mental block or some kind of huge anxiety?
Again, very unique. Some of the athletes, I've travelled for the last 20 years now. It's been a privilege. So it was the 5th Olympics last time. This is number 6. And I found what I work best with is the athlete tells me, I believe the psych should be available all the time, but invisible. So they give me a thumbs up sign if I'm at a venue for a World Championships or Olympics. A thumbs up means I don't need you. A thumbs across means just hover, and a thumbs down means can you come and support or remind me and get the mind in focus. So it is very much teamwork.
How do you keep the fun in the games, in competing, when there's so much pressure?
I'm glad you asked that, because research shows us that athletes who go in and enjoy their sport and say, I do it because it makes me happy, are more likely to succeed than athletes who feel they've got a point to prove. Again, you can't be dogmatic and say that everyone should go in there in a very happy frame of mind. But the evidence is that, which is probably self-evident, that you go in there happy, you're more likely to enjoy it and perform at your best.
OK, Professor Steve Peters, really interesting to talk to you and learn more about how you help athletes. Enjoy the Games. We hope all of those that you are helping go on to succeed. Thank you. Well, we are keeping an eye on these pictures here. This is one railway station in Paris which has been impacted by what's being called malicious acts aimed at paralysing the transport system. That's coming from the government there just hours before the opening ceremony for the Paris Olympics French rail company SNCF says its high-speed network has been targeted. We've had a statement in from Eurostar, which has also been impacted. This is the scene at Montparnasse railway station, a really busy hub there. Well, Eurostar has said that the journey times to Paris could be around an hour and a half longer because of trains needing to be diverted. They said several trains have been cancelled. They said a status update on Eurostar's site warns passengers, we advise you to postpone your trip as your train is likely to be delayed due to infrastructure issues. They have said in a full statement, due to coordinated acts of malice in France affecting the high-speed line between Paris and Lille, all high-speed trains going to and coming from Paris are being diverted via the classic line today. This extends the journey time by around an hour and a half. Several trains have been cancelled. They said the Eurostar teams are fully mobilised in stations, in call centres and on board to ensure all passengers are informed and can reach their destinations. They said customers are being informed via email, SMS and on Eurostar. Customers can cancel free of charge or be refunded. They can modify their journey free of charge, but they are advising people to postpone their trips because of these severe delays. And obviously this will impact so many people. Tens of thousands of people travelling to Paris. In fact, we believe more than 300,000 spectators are in the French capital today for the start of the Olympics, for the opening ceremony tonight. Many will be travelling on the Eurostar. So this is going to have a huge impact on people trying to get to France and also within France itself. The Transport Minister of France has strongly condemned what he has called criminal acts that he said would indeed affect people's holiday plans and their plans to see the Olympics. Well, let's get the latest on all of this with our Paris correspondent, Hugh Schofield. Hugh, what more do we know about what's happened and the impact that it's having?
Well, it's big, it's serious, it's coordinated, it's criminal, clearly aimed at the Olympics. So, yeah, it is... what the authorities feared. I mean, it could have been obviously a lot more worse had this been a question of lives being lost and so on. But it's still quite clearly an attempt to disrupt the beginning of this very, very important day. This day which everyone has been waiting for, the Olympic ceremony on the River Seine. Everyone planning for that, and now this. It's disrupting the lives of many, many people. The French government is saying 800,000 people were planning to take these TGV trains today, and their lives will be, very much disrupted as a result of that. Don't forget that it's not just a question of people arriving in Paris today for the Olympics. It's also a question of people leaving Paris in their droves for the start of the school holidays. So those days have been disrupted too. For the moment, it's not just a question of delays. I don't think any of these stations is operating until there is the beginning of a minimum service returning to these lines. People are being told don't even bother turning up to the main railway stations in order to travel on TGV trains. So no, it's a big deal, and it's criminal, and there'll be an awful effort now made to find out who is behind all of this, because quite clearly whoever it is wanted to wreck this first day of the Olympics.
Is it clear at the moment exactly what these acts of sabotage entail? We've heard about fires being started. Do we know which stations, or is it just that the whole system is now in paralysis? Hugh, can you hear me? Apologies, we have lost the line to Hugh though, but he was saying that 800,000 travellers have been affected by this huge targeted attack on the transport network in Paris and in surrounding areas, affecting also Eurostar, as I was saying. Eurostar saying for people to keep an eye on the information that's coming their way, but to postpone their journeys if they can. Do stay with us here on BBC News. We'll be back with plenty more in just a moment around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News. The UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting says the body responsible for regulating health and social care services in England is not fit for purpose. It follows an independent review of the Care Quality Commission, which identified significant failings. The CQC says it accepts the findings.
Honesty is the best policy. That's why I've moved quickly to publish the interim findings, because there are ratings that people will be looking at today which I can't have confidence in. I don't think the public can have confidence in, and I've asked the CQC urgently to put in place transparency around those ratings so that people can see how those ratings were put together and then make a judgment about whether it's a true and fair and accurate reflection of the quality of care. Leadership is vital. We need a new permanent chief executive at the Care Quality Commission and a new chief inspector of hospitals that we can work with to turn the regulator around, and we're going to get the best person for the job if we are honest about the challenge and also reassuring them that whether it's the board or indeed the government, we will give them every bit of support they need to deliver the radical reform that organisation requires. And we've already got some work underway too. Professor Sir Mike Richards, hugely respected in this area, is already doing a rapid review of the assessment framework that's used to judge hospitals and care providers.
Well, let's speak to our health correspondent Nick Triggle now, who has more on this. Welcome to you. First of all, explain what the CQC is and their role.
Well, this is the main regulator for health and care services. So they are there to identify failings in hospital services, in GP surgeries and dental surgeries, and across the care sector and care homes. But the report today that will be published later this morning, from what the government says, is incredibly damning. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has said the CQC is simply not fit for purpose, and he's stunned by the failures. And let's have a look at some of those failures. Inspectors who have been asked to go into hospitals having never been into a hospital before. A care home inspector who had never met a person with dementia. Across the board, there's inconsistencies in the way they inspect and assess these services. And there's also a big backlog of inspections. 1 in 5 of the services they've got responsibility for have yet to receive a rating. The Care Quality Commission has said it accepts the findings in full.
So they accept the findings in full. What happens next?
Well, as you were just hearing, the Health Secretary is looking for a new chief executive and senior management at the CQC. The previous chief executive, Ian Trenholm, stepped down last month, just before this report has been published, obviously. There's an interim chief executive in there. Sir Mike Richards, who was a former chief inspector of hospitals, is already at the CQC working alongside the current leadership to look at what is happening and what can be improved immediately. The CQC has also been asked to report regularly to the Health Secretary about the steps that are being taken. The final report with the full set of recommendations we won't get until the autumn, and I suspect that will be the thing that triggers a major overhaul of the regulator. What
does this mean, though, for the 90,000 different services who are supposed to be monitored by the CQC? How much faith can we have in our medical practitioners, in hospitals, in GP surgeries?
Well, that's the big question that is being asked. Services receive 1 of 4 ratings: outstanding, good, requires improvement, or inadequate. And the public use those when they're perhaps trying to choose a care home for a member of their family, or when they're looking for a GP surgery or a dental surgery, even when they're perhaps deciding which hospital in their local area to go to and to go onto the waiting list for a hip or knee replacement, for example. So these are crucial pieces of information that the public does use and is very familiar with. And Wes Streeting has said it does pose questions about, the accuracy of these ratings. Well, there's one hospital that hasn't been inspected for over 10 years. So
apologies, we have
the patients and the public.
Nick, thank you very much. Apologies for the little break up in the sound at the end there. Now to the US, and the Vice President Kamala Harris has had what she describes as a frank and constructive meeting with the visiting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In it, the Democratic presidential hopeful expressed her serious concern about Palestinian civilian casualties in Israel's war with Hamas. She also reiterated her unwavering commitment to the US allies' security, but urged Mr Netanyahu to agree to a ceasefire deal. Let's hear some of what Kamala Harris had to say after the meeting.
I have met with the families of these American hostages multiple times now, and I've told them each time they are not alone, and I stand with them. And President Biden and I are working every day to bring them home. I also expressed with the Prime Minister my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. And I made clear my serious concern about the dire humanitarian situation there, with over 2 million people facing high levels of food insecurity, and 500,000 people facing catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
The family of a man who was kicked and stamped on by a police officer at Manchester Airport say they have been traumatised by the incident. Greater Manchester Police has suspended an armed officer and referred itself to the independent watchdog in response. A warning: there are distressing images in this report from our UK editor, Ed Thomas.
Chaos inside Manchester Airport.
No, we ain't done no. We're normal civilians.
Armed police, some with tasers.
He's getting locked up.
Now watch the male officer. First a kick, then a stamp.
Move back, move back.
The man in the light blue is motionless, his mother sitting over him.
Stop kicking people.
The male officer who kicked him then moves to the man sitting on the bench, who has his hands on his head. He's stamped on, then it looks like he's hit with a taser. Here, blood appears to be falling from this female officer's nose. In distress, she's taken away by a colleague. And later, this happened. We understand these men witnessed the first incident. They're approached by different armed officers. One is pepper sprayed, before two were handcuffed and taken away.
You see the court there?
The brothers at the centre of the stamping incident recorded this video of their injuries.
We are headed to Rochdale Police Station.
This footage was posted on social media by their solicitor.
His medical condition has worsened.
He told us Fahir, seen here on the ground, was rushed to hospital. What's the health situation on both brothers?
One brother is still in hospital, like I said, with a cyst on his brain. Let's hope he makes a full recovery.
One police officer has now been suspended. Hundreds marched from the offices of the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, who oversees GMP. He confirmed he'd seen police footage of the incident.
I've seen the full footage that others will not have seen. What is clear is that this is a fast-moving situation that escalates. There are issues on both sides. It's not clear-cut. However, I do not step away from my initial judgment that this was a disturbing incident.
The police watchdog, the IOPC, said it was investigating the level of force used by officers. Ed Thomas, BBC News, Rochdale.
And so let's just return now to our top story and the transport issues in Paris. Just hours ahead of the Olympic opening ceremony, the French rail company SNCF says it has been hit by what it calls a massive attack, paralysing the network. This is the outside of one of the key stations in Paris, Montparnasse. It's a key hub. Lots of people trying to get to different places from this station. Well, we've heard from various people in France and to do with the Olympic opening ceremony, and this is a statement being made by one official there in this station. We'll get a translation as soon as we can, but we do know that 800,000 travellers, a huge amount, have been affected. 3 high-speed lines connecting the capital with the west, north and east of the country have actually been set on fire in the past few hours, and we understand a 4th arson attack has been foiled. So severe delays, some cancellations, and also Eurostar warning people to keep an eye on what's happening there. Lots of trains cancelled and delayed, urging people to delay their trip if they can. Stay with us here on BBC News. We'll have all the latest.